Closed captioning is enabled. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to drop them in the chat. We're also a pretty small group today, so you're welcome to come off mute. You can use the raised hand feature under the reactions icon. If you have a question and you want to be able to come off mute, and that'll flag to me that you'd like to ask something. We're also looking for any comments and responses. You're welcome to drop those in the chat. If you have any tech issues, just send me a direct message and I'll be happy to sort that out for you. Okay. Let's talk about the goals for today's training. First thing we want to do is scope the issue. So what is it? What is the nature of this issue? Older adults experiencing homelessness. Then we'd like to identify some unique challenges in serving older adults experiencing homelessness, including through some real world examples. And we'd also like to go over some example strategies that could be used to overcome some of those challenges. So by no means do I think that this training is going to be an exhaustive list of all the things that can necessarily implicate serving older adults in shelter. But I do think that we've covered in our content today a decent amount of the high level and mid-level issues that are going to affect this issue. Also, what I'd probably call a bonus objective is today we're also excited to actually identify some partner agencies that can help you providers work through some of these challenges over the coming term. So you're going to want to keep, I don't know if people still use Rolodexes, but save a page for some of the folks you're going to meet today. Right, today's agenda. We've already done group introductions, so next we're going to do some speaker introductions. Then I will scope the issue for the audience. Then I will hand it off to DC Partnership to walk through some real world challenges and examples. We'll have a quick Q&A session after that, and then we'll do an overview of aging and adult services and adult protective services. That presentation is brought to us by Adult Protective Services and In-Home Supportive Services. We'll have a Q&A after that, and then we will close out. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my guest speakers today. We have three on deck, Janet and Cassie in presentation mode, and then Mitchell in a support role for Q&A. So Janet, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and introducing yourself.
Yes. Hello, I'm Janet, and I'm with DC Partnership. I am the HEART coordinator, and I'm happy to be speaking today.
Thank you so much, Janet. And Cassie, if you wouldn't mind introducing.
Good morning, everyone. I am Cassie Villar and look forward to learning more and also sharing our department's information as well.
Thank you, Cassie. And Mitchell. Is Mitchell with us?
I'm muted. Yeah, sorry.
There we
go. My name is Mitchell Montoya, HSS supervisor. I'm looking forward to helping with any questions that come up regarding our program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mitchell. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into the content. Let's scope the issue. All right, so it may by now be a pretty clear fact to most in the audience that ours is an aging nation. By 2034, experts are predicting that older adults in the United States will outnumber children for the very first time in US history. So adding to that, living here in the state of California, California has one of the highest life expectancies in the nation at approximately 80 years. The national average is around 75. And naturally, of course, San Mateo County outpaces that even further. So our life expectancy in this county is around 85 years. People are living longer, And people are getting older, and the birth rate is relatively declining these days. And I should also point out, this is an international issue. There are many nations like this in the world now. As we continue to age, aging itself is changing too, the nature of aging. California's older adult population is becoming a lot more diverse, and it's more likely to be living alone and at a higher risk of poverty. This shift is going to urge our communities to plan our services toward these clients more and more as time goes on. And things that we should be keeping in mind as we work to serve these populations is that we should, above all, be valuing people's autonomy, their right to freedom of choice, their equity, their dignity, their inclusion, accessibility, and also working amongst ourselves to innovate and partner with each other to deliver the best possible services that we can. I want to talk a little bit about the stereotyping and prejudice that can intersect with this issue. And the specific term is ageism. And just so that we can, I'm sure we've all heard this term before, I just want to be sure that we're all on the exact same page about the precise definition of this term. So the definition is a prejudice or discrimination based on assumptions about age. I want to be clear that ageism it can, of course, have some pretty notable ill effects on one's health, on their well-being, and their lifespan. So these things, when a person experiences prejudice, it can actually have a tangible effect on their well-being. And of course, it's also going to increase social inequity. It's going to marginalize members of this group. So as an example, ageism is a common issue in medicine. And for instance, we find that folks with dementia are often not properly evaluated. They may have complex drug regimens, unnecessarily even. And it's important that we think about what it takes for the person to live a good life rather than treating individual symptoms regardless of their age, so that we can break away from that manner of thinking about this issue. Now, practically speaking, and stepping away from dictionary definitions, it's important to note that ageism simply describes a prejudice based on the basis of age. It is not specific to older adults. So ageism, for instance, can, as I'm sure we've all seen in popular media today, so millennials, for instance, are a very frequent target of ageism. Now, with that said, older folks are much more likely to experience age discrimination, however, compared to their younger counterparts. But the good news here is that studies show that happiness and well-being are actually parabolic throughout life, with relative, actually the parabola goes this way. Studies have actually shown that happiness and well-being have relative peaks in youth and old age. So I think that means that for middle-aged people like me here, I have something to look forward to. Hooray. So let's be mindful of thinly veiled insults, things like "he's so sharp," or the "old dog new tricks," or "she should retire." We have to be mindful of the stereotypes that come along with our interactions with older adults that would otherwise portray them as somehow sick or frail or dependent or depressed or rigid, or somehow monolithic, that they are all the same and that they have somehow lost their individuality in older age. Let's talk about what some of the actual reality limitations are of aging. A handful of things that mostly relate to physical form. So vision and one's ability to focus their eyesight or depth perception. As you can see, that's already an issue for me. Looking forward to it, literally. Hearing. This can be a very gradual loss for some. It can be a more abrupt loss for others, but is almost guaranteed for all of us at some point. And one of the most important things to be mindful of with regards to hearing is that it is oftentimes mistaken for a cognitive impairment. We should be patient when communicating with older adults to remind ourselves that this person, not necessarily jump to the conclusion that this person has a cognitive impairment, but that instead they may just be having difficulty hearing us. In addition to that, we're also going to see dexterity issues, stiffness and range of motion, and of course, strength. And then cognition is another limitation that is very common in older age. Waning cognition, that is. So what are some of the approaches that we can take to try to address some of those very basic challenges that folks will face in older age? Well, as far as eyesight is concerned, most important thing is to make sure that we're providing very bright light around us, that we're printing things in larger font. Specifically, actually, studies have found that we can make things a lot easier for folks to read if we avoid blue, violet, and green colors for the font. And the most apparent and standout font combination is going to be red font on a yellow background. Also, when we're communicating with people verbally, make sure that we maintain eye contact, use slower speech, try to enunciate as much as possible, and also try to minimize any background noise to the extent possible, especially when we're on the phone. It's incredibly important to keep the microphone as close to our mouths as possible and try to put ourselves in an isolated environment so that they're not hearing a bunch of road noise behind us, things of that nature. Let's also be sure to offer tools and equipment and assistance, and always exercise that with patients. So there are lots of tools out there to help people with reduced dexterity to get into containers or reach objects that are higher up, things of that nature. And then finally, when we're confronting cognition issues, one thing that can be really helpful is to constantly identify by name. So when speaking about other folks in the third person, try to identify them by name rather than using she, he, them, they. Try to just go with the name. Also repeat the individual's name that you're communicating with on a regular basis, and try to repeat your own name as the conversation allows. And again, always with as much patience as possible. So what are some holistic considerations about the activities and resources that we can present to our older clientele? When we're planning to work with older clientele, it's important, of course, to consider their health and wellness first and foremost. Social engagements are also incredibly important. Studies are actually showing that social engagement is one of several very high predictors of longevity. People with intact social networks and connections to others tend to live longer, fuller lives. So to the extent that we can keep people in contact with their friends or help them build new relationships with others, that can be very helpful to their health in a holistic fashion. And mobility, of course, making sure that folks are able to access different areas within our facilities. And then again, getting back to equipment and assistive devices that help them live with as much autonomy as they can. It's important for us to also reflect on a sort of sub-issue within the issue of serving older adults. There's an equity implication here. And and I should mention that this slide deck will be available for everybody after today's session. And there are some hyperlinks embedded in these slides to actually take you to the various articles where this information is found. But social systems and structures influence how genes are expressed. and they can impact a person's biological response and risk of disease. So certain social indicators like household income, education, one's neighborhood, their geographic location, and pollution exposure, all of these things can actually accelerate the biological aging process. So it's really important to remember that actual age does not necessarily equal biological age. All of the symptoms and issues that I just outlined a few slides ago, these things become more prevalent for folks who experience higher rates of low income, low education, adverse neighborhood conditions, and exposure to environmental pollutions, things like that. And unfortunately, as we all know, because we also, I'm sure, just attended the race equity training last week and part one a couple of months ago, we all know that Black and brown folks are at much higher risk of these factors, and therefore, on average, tend to have a higher biological age than their actual age. So that's, put more simply, that's to say that Black and brown folks are going to present with symptoms of folks older than themselves at an earlier age. And now we might also be wondering by now, because I've been talking in very general terms for the entire time so far, what is the nexus to homelessness? Cal Matters, you may be familiar with, is a publication focused on homelessness in the state of California. They found from 2017 to 2021, California's senior population grew by 7%, but the number of homeless individuals 55 and over that were seeking services grew by 84%, as a massive distinction. So we're seeing the general age of our population getting somewhat older gradually, but the rate at which those folks are seeking homelessness services is growing exponentially compared to that rate. By comparison, across all ages, 43% was the rate of growth for folks seeking homeless services. Important too to note that similar to the equity issues I just described, exposure, which is a common issue, well, almost a ubiquitous issue really for folks experiencing homelessness, also advances people's biological age faster than their actual age. It is estimated that the advance of biological age for people experiencing homelessness is approximately 20 years. So that's to say that a person who is legally or actually 50 years old may be experiencing symptoms that are more commonplace for someone who is in their 70s. In addition, homelessness among older adults is expected to triple in 2030. So as I said earlier, the rate of older adults seeking homeless services and housing is going to grow very quickly over the next several years. What are some of the factors that are contributing to homelessness amongst older adults? Older adults are dealing with lifelong personal challenges that tend to become homeless as younger adults, and they remain chronically homeless into older adulthood. Becoming more and more common these days is those who are encountering a crisis late in life that leads to a period of first-time homelessness, and that can be eviction, death of a partner, or a disabling illness. Also, living on limited and fixed incomes increases their housing burden, and it makes it more difficult to restabilize after a crisis has already occurred. So the cost of living, as we all know, is skyrocketing, the cost of housing especially, and benefit programs that are intended to support these individuals is not keeping up. Social isolation and lack of family or friend networks who are able or willing to share their housing, and loss or breakdown of relationships may also contribute. some of the chronic and complex health conditions that we see amongst older folks. They have higher, so folks over the age of 50 tend to experience higher rates of geriatric conditions. As I described earlier, oftentimes people are experiencing conditions that are 20 years advanced from their actual age. Many of these conditions are treatable, but doing so is more difficult when people do not have access to consistent medical care. Research has also found that unstably housed adults over the age of 50 were using the emergency room at a rate nearly 4 times the general population. In addition, and I'm happy to say that we've got guest speakers who are going to be able to talk about some of these issues. Increased risk of being victimized due to their health and mobility limitations. There's also limited employment opportunity and options for increasing income, difficulty accessing benefits due to a lack of permanent address. And of course, as we've already discussed, discrimination and stereotyping based on their age. So serving older adults in shelter specifically, because I know that we've got to focus on shelter providers today. Important to provide 24-hour shelter access to the extent that we can so that older adults can stay inside and rest during the day. Their sleeping patterns may change as well. That's another thing that can shift as one ages. Also allowing older adults to sleep nearer to the bathroom and providing assistance with daily living activities, the usual things of cooking, cleaning, laundry, bathing, traveling to medical and other appointments, taking medications, tracking those medications, and paying bills. More practically speaking, what are some facility modifications that we can try to think about as we serve older and older adult populations in our shelters? Let's try to widen our hallways and doors to the extent possible. And please bear in mind, none of these things are hard and fast rules. I understand some of these things are quite challenging to accomplish, but to the extent that we can think about them, the better. Also, bathrooms on the first floor, ramps, no step entryways, stair lifts, grab bars, handrails, removable shower heads, monitoring technology, phones for the hearing impaired, brighter lighting and emergency lighting like we talked about. This is a big one. Rugs and carpets that are fastened to the floor. We can have a lot of slip and fall accidents for rugs that are not attached to the floor properly. Adjustable height closet rods and refrigerator space that is reserved for medicine. Also, bear in mind, we're not going to get into it because it's almost a presentation unto itself, but a lot of these things actually have Disability Act implications. So some of these may actually go beyond the realm of practical considerations and into the realm of legal considerations. Also, let's think about coordinating with one another and across systems, right? Older adults have health issues that are treated by several clinicians and may have co-occurring issues requiring specialized care. Important to remember that some of these supports can actually be funded by Medi-Cal and have been shown to reduce hospitalizations and health crises amongst those experiencing homelessness. Best practices for coordinating care are going to be conducting comprehensive need assessments, providing individualized care planning, making use of multidisciplinary service teams, providing one-stop access to the extent possible. The more we can co-locate our services, the better. Okay, I've been talking a lot. I'm going to slow down for just a minute here and open it up for a brief group discussion. Give ourselves a few minutes here. And I'm just curious, because again, I know we have a lot of shelter providers in the room, and I know that we're in the midst of, we are literally experiencing this trend toward older adults. In fact, my understanding is that this training was brought to you somewhat by popular demand. So I'm curious to hear from the group, and I think we're a pretty tight-knit crew here. Have you observed a trend toward older clientele in your shelters? If so, has that trend put any notable pressure on your programs? And what changes to our homelessness system of care or our shelters specifically do you anticipate are going to be needed to respond to this shifting demographic as we move forward? So feel free, this is very free form opportunity, but I'm just curious to hear from folks in the room, any anecdotal observations from your work that relate to this issue. You don't have to answer these questions in order or answer all of them. Oh, and if you use the raise hand feature, then I can take people off mute as we go. Let's just start with the most basic one, because like I said, this training was brought to you by popular demand. So someone in here must have seen a trend toward older clientele in your shelters. Is anyone actually seeing that trend?
Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Sandoval. I'm a case manager with Life Moves. I have actually enjoyed this whole presentation thus far. I feel like I've been able to relate to a little bit of everything that you've said. I've had elder adults married and divorced on fixed income, currently waiting for housing. I had an elderly woman come from the islands for health purposes, and then was here on limited income as well. And then I've had elders who were taken care of by their family their whole lives and just kind of were the last ones living, and then just kind of started experiencing homelessness that way. And so there's been a lot of challenges. What I've seen is that the collaboration between the services and the understanding and the openness of like each service and how they all work together to support that individual really, really does support our clients on our end for sure. So the more of the collaboration does work. I mean, I've been able to successfully house two elder adults so far this year, and it was a challenge, but it did take time, and it took consistency and the collaboration among all the services, because there was that mental health, and then there was that introduction too. And there's a big challenge with the tech. I like that you addressed the tech, because the tech is the biggest one right now, because everybody's transitioning to remote, or you have to answer a phone call or a video call. And this is just something that I've experienced with this population that's super resistant. They don't want to do it, or they don't have the devices to move forward with the appointments or follow through with any of these kinds of things, or even just understanding email. Some of them is just not, so I'm excited to hear what else is what else is coming. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for double clicking on that issue, Bianca. The tech access is a massive issue as well, and definitely worth reflecting on how to make this new world that we're living in, especially ever since COVID, more accessible to older adults. What kind of assistance can we offer them to make sure that they can still access resources that are becoming more and more accessible only by the internet? So yeah, thank you for highlighting that, and also double clicking on collaboration. It's all about collaboration and partnership. Thank you. I think we probably have time for one more comment. If anybody has any thoughts or responses to these question prompts in front of us.
I'll just share a thought.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't find who's speaking.
Sorry, it's Mariah.
Oh, hey, Mariah.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about I think most people here probably visited the new navigation center, and I think that is like very, very thoughtful of what are the kinds of changes that we need to see in our homeless system, like as far as like physical change and like an actual change to the type of sheltering we need to do. Like we really do need to be thoughtful about different levels of ability and aging as we see this population grow. And I think, you know, one thing that we see at the core level is when we're doing the referrals, it's just a lot of folks are in the situation they're in because they are disabled in some way and or they're unable to work. And when you're unable to work, it makes it really, really challenging to live here, especially if you don't have like a big support network of family that you can stay with or something like that, because you need to have a solid income that keeps up with inflation and all of that to just survive, not even to thrive, just like surviving here. And families that have, you know, only one income, it's incredibly challenging to make it here and pay like quote unquote market rate rent. It's just ridiculous. So when people are on that fixed income, it makes it very, very challenging. And then if you add in their disabling conditions, it also just makes it hard to even find housing when you're trying to move out of where you are or get out of homelessness. Like if you can't do stairs, it can be very, very challenging because a lot of the spaces where they even have elevators, the elevators are old and they break down all the time. And then you have folks who are isolated on a third floor, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of challenges to all of that. And I think the NAV Center is a really good example of like really thinking forward quite a bit and saying like, okay, we have to really think about like, I really liked one of the first slides you had where it was like where we're going to be in 2050, 2060. You know, unfortunately right now our country doesn't really take care of people who are the most disenfranchised, people who are disabled, you know, all of that kind of thing is, yeah, you get a social security check, but it's never enough. So, yeah, I think we see it on all levels, like people who are potentially entering homelessness in shelter, and then when we're trying to help them exit homelessness and into stable housing.
Yeah, thank you so much for raising those issues, Mariah. Great points all. You've also got me reflecting on the aging infrastructure of the area where we live in, right? A lot of the affordable is not a fun word to use in San Mateo County, but the slightly more affordable apartments tend to be in older buildings. And a lot of those second floor and up apartments are only accessible by stairs in my observation. And then to your point, if there is an elevator, it tends to be pretty old and questionably maintained and, you know, probably breaks down with some frequency. So it can create a lot of issues for accessibility. First floors become more and more valuable as a result. So yeah, it takes us back to some of those earlier considerations. So thank you so much, Bianca and Mariah, for coming off mute to share those thoughts and observations. I know that this is a pressing issue for so many in our community right now. Okay, I am officially done running my mouth for at least several minutes. You can stop having to listen to me. I'm going to pass things off to Janet as our first guest speaker. And Janet, if you'd like to share your screen and take it away, the microphone is yours.
Good morning, everyone. So again, my name is Janet Bronson, and I am with HEART, the Healthy Aging Response Team. Our department is a part of the Daly City Partnership, and my program is one of 6 nonprofit programs under the partnership. So who we are. So the goal of the Healthy Aging Response Team is to assist our aging community navigate through many of our community services that they may not be aware of. So not only are we a referral service, we refer them to food, transportation, shelter. We have a care coordinator that goes out and conducts home visits to make assessments for the client's needs. Based on that assessment, we provide a plan on how to proceed with providing care and make those referrals. Now, I also wanted to touch base on what Bianca had mentioned with digital equity. One of the services that we do provide is through CTN, providing free tablets to our seniors 60 above, so that can, you know, relieve some of that digital equity and that divide between our seniors who don't necessarily have the option to connect with family members who live across the country. So just a quote here, the nature of humanity, its essence, is to feel another's pain as one's own and to act to take that pain away. There is nobility and compassion, a beauty and empathy, a grace and forgiveness. And that's by John Connolly. Empathy, compassion, and respect. This is, you know, all of our seniors are looking for that. And it just, you know, sometimes it does take a kind act of kindness to touch one, especially of those who are in need. I'm going to go over the challenges faced by our aging adults in San Mateo County. Can you name some of the challenges our adults face today? Before we go over, if you guys want to put that in the chat. As we go over this, we're going to go over a few. Uncertainty. Most seniors are facing the high rise of health costs. Medical debt is the leading causes of bankruptcy in the United States. Medicare only covers some of the care expenses. However, it doesn't cover everything, especially if a senior needs to go to assisted living facilities or retirement homes. The out-of-pocket cost to get in-home support services, or IHSS, for caregivers is another one of those costs. So we have physical aging that was mentioned before. Older adults are at risk of certain diseases that may have chronic ailments. All at once, they experience normal signs of aging like vision, hearing loss, and declining cognitive function. There's also physical assistance, the ability to remain independent in their own homes. Most seniors, once they reach a certain age, you know, disability is prevalent. They may require more assistance with daily living, such as eating, bathing, walking, driving, and financial tasks such as going to the bank and paying bills. Financial security is another. Most seniors are living on a fixed income such as SSI and SSA. Not all seniors have a retirement plan. Oops, wrong way. Sorry. Loneliness. Most aging adults are faced with the reality of losing their friends, you know, family members. What happens when a lifelong partner passes? Some seniors are forgotten by their family members who've moved either, you know, cross country or, you know, across the continent, and they don't get visitors. Technical difficulties, I'm sorry.
That happens to me too sometimes. Maybe you can use your arrow key on your computer instead. Does that work? Oh, there you go. No.
Yeah. Okay, so the challenges that our seniors face today. Most seniors are on a fixed income, like Social Security. Not everybody has a retirement plan. Food. Most seniors are unable to afford nutritious food, like going to the groceries nowadays. I mean, we experience, one bag of grocery nowadays because of inflation. It's already $50. So within a month, the data compiled by through the Daly City Community Center's food program, we noticed that from April 1st to May 31st, there were 470 persons between the ages of 45 and 54 that came in to pick up food. Now, we had 388 persons served between the ages of 55 and 61. But let's notice right here how the number of people served between the ages of 62 and above spiked to 1,400 people served. It's 1,400 seniors, 62 and above. Really shows the need. So other identifying challenges faced by our aging adults are housing, medical, loneliness and isolation, and mental health. Homelessness. We really need to get support in advocating for real low-income housing for our aging adults. A lot of the BMRs that are here locally are more than what our seniors are able to afford. So Social Security for one person could be anywhere from $900 to maybe 15. There's not very many adults that aging adults that receive a 2,000 or plus Social Security check monthly. And our BMRs, we have a place here in Daly City that costs $1,700 for a studio. So we definitely need to work on advocating for real below market rate homes for our seniors. So 56, and these are older adults in California, 56% experience financial instability. It drops down to 11.4% experiencing food instability, and that's with the help of our, free food programs throughout California. And again, as Max mentioned earlier, 84% of the homeless populations are seniors. So the racial demographics of the homeless in San Mateo County is 30% Black, 32% Asian, and 60% white. Our seniors are susceptible to abuse, elderly abuse, fraud scams, scams, and identity theft. The types of elderly abuse are neglect, and that's not giving the person the care they need, such as adequate food, medical care, suitable accommodations, dental care as well. And it's also when a caretaker is getting paid to care for the senior and they're not providing such care. There's financial exploitation that our seniors face, and that could be people intercepting checks, coercing a senior to change their estate, befriending them for personal gain, identity theft. There's physical abuse when a caregiver may get upset and they're hitting, slapping, locking them in the room, or causing any type of bodily harm. There's also emotional and physical abuse when anyone is yelling and threatening, saying hurtful words, calling them names, threatening to keep them away from friends or family. There's abandonment, leaving the seniors alone without ensuring the proper care and that their needs are met for long periods of time. And sexual abuse, which is either forcing an older adult to watch or be part of sexual acts. These are the things that our seniors are susceptible to. I have a few real stories that we've encountered here at the community center. So a story of financial neglect is when one of our we had a case where one of the clients was our care nav coordinator was contacted, and she did a home assessment because there was a complaint about the client not wanting to wear a mask. When she made the assessment, she discovered that the client was bedridden, was unable to move, was unable to provide for himself, but he had the financial means. However, because of his diagnoses, he wound up not being, he just, for some reason, he neglected paying his rent and paying all his other bills. So once our care navigator went into the home and did the visit, she made several calls to other services within the county, and was able to get him assisted with palliative care through Kaiser, because he did not have medical care. He didn't qualify for Medi-Cal because of his financial background. However, she was able to, just by advocating for him, she was able to get, he was able to receive palliative care. And later on, after I'd say maybe 2 years of assistance, we were able to help this client get into the name of it, the conservatorship eventually. So not only do we do referrals, but our care coordinator was instrumental in making sure, and she followed through with making sure that the client received the care that he needed within within the time. And this is just a quote from Maria Orleman, who is our care coordinator. My responsibility is to uplift the clients, gain their confidence and trust, to connect and meet their needs. My dedication to each client is to do everything within my power to ensure they feel supported and heard. Home visits give me the opportunity to assess and understand their individual needs by developing a service plan, which includes case management and follow-up. So we have another case that was harassment, elder abuse, and housing displacement. So this particular client, we received a call because the client was on the verge of getting evicted. And the landlord in this case had been harassing the client. So he was charging her $23,000 of back rent, which he never provided a ledger for. He and the attorney had served the client with 5 days to relinquish the account, or they were going to go to court. But it was established once the client was referred to legal aid of San Mateo County, and it was established that, number one, that the 5-day notice was not legal. So, it just, caused additional stress to the client. And the client had been harassed by the landlord and the landlord's attorney, knocking on the door at all hours of the evening, late evenings, and screaming, demanding payment. So when legal aid took over the case, our client was able to not get retribution or any type of compensation, but it was established that the landlord was wrong, that he was, that he had committed harm to the client, and that while the client did not have to pay the $2,300 back rent that the landlord had stated she owed, because there was no proof of, there wasn't a ledger that he could provide to the court, that was dismissed. The client did have to leave, and so they winded up having, so in this case, the client was, even though she did not have to pay the $23,000, she was displaced because she did have to leave by the end of the year of December 2022. However, we had to find other places for her to live, which they were able to move her in with a daughter who lived in another, either, I think it was state that she had to move to. So these are just one of the, two of the examples that we have regarding displacement. So the Daly City Community Center is one of our sister, is part of the Daly City Partnership, which provides assistance with rental assistance, shelter referral, food toiletries. Okay, and then you have my program, which is referral services. We have our second home. We have a mental health, Vicky Vinculato, who is our LMFT. And then our family services. We have Kapwa, who's caters to youth and aging adults of Filipino descent. Partnership. And thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janet. Really appreciate the rundown of what DC Partnership has on deck, and your connections to all the other programs. I think was ASAP in there? I thought I saw.
Yes. Lisa.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of great connections available, and connections that I think can drive towards some of those issues that we already covered in the earlier sections. Different issues that are affecting older adults who are experiencing homelessness, different things that are available to keep them connected to our community, connected to their own social networks, and thriving. So let's take a few minutes here in case folks have questions for Janet about any of the resources that Janet shared.
You're in mute. Oh, okay. There.
One of the things the community center works hand in hand with the health and response and the cost referrals. So if someone on a senior and do the actually
Just curious to know if there's any area restrictions. So I know you're based out of Daly City. So is it all San Mateo County, or is it just within the vicinity of Daly City?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you?
As far as like zoning, do you guys have like a zone where you cut off, or do you provide services all across San Mateo County, or is it specifically around Daly City area, or do you have to have an address reflecting Daly City to receive services, or?
So we predominantly assist Daly City, Broadmoor, and Colma.
That's a great question, Bianca. Also to the audience, that the Housing First and Shelter Working Group, I believe, was also discussing at one of the most recent meetings, trying to get a sense of what our coverage is relative to the geographic locations of the biggest hotspots for folks experiencing homelessness around San Mateo County. And I think, the most notable two hotspots tend to focus right around Redwood City, south end of the county, and then also up at that north end of the county around Daly City. So, yeah, great question. Thanks, Bianca. Other thoughts or questions? All right. Of course, we are also going to make slide decks available for the group. And Mariah is pointing out that all of the programs work collaboratively. That's HEART, the community center, et cetera. And all of those programs I noticed are mentioned in the slide deck that Janet just presented to us. And we always make sure that these slide decks are available for you to download after our session. So of course, keep an eye out for the follow-up email that comes out after each of these trainings, typically within about a week's time. Takes a minute to pull everything together. And you'll be able to access these materials and make sure that you can bookmark all these different agencies. Oh, and thanks for clarifying, Mariah. Primary focuses on Daly City area. All right. Quick pause just to see if there are any other questions before we move on. Okay. Well, I think with that, it is time to pass to our next guest speaker, Cassie.
All right.
Cassie?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Cassie Villar. I will be sharing a PowerPoint today so that you can see what I'm talking about. Just know I really typically can't see questions as I'm in presentation mode. So Max, if you don't mind sharing a question, if you happen to see one, that
I'm
would
all
be
over it.
great. Awesome. All right. My name is Cassie Villar, and I work with San Mateo County and specifically Adult Protective Services. So today is just going to be a quick overview, general overview of APS, as well as other programs under Aging and Adult Services. Our umbrella kind of goes like this. We are under the Health Department. After that, Aging and Adult, and then Adult Protective Services. So let's go into it. Like we've mentioned before here within San Mateo County, we definitely are on the older side. We're considered a little more seasoned here in our county. We're looking at about 1 in 4 residents will be 65 in less than a decade. And the baby boomers are the second biggest generation next to millennials. A lot of people think it's the boomers. Actually, no, it is millennials. But here, demographically speaking, we do have an aging population like we've talked about. So what is Adult Protective Services? We are an agency. We are county employees who investigate any type of reports of elder abuse regarding elders, as well as dependent adults. As long as you are living independently, you would be coming through APS for any concerns. That could be multi-generational homes, apartments, private homes, hotels, and so forth. Anybody living in a long-term care facility and you have concerns about the quality of care, you would contact the county ombudsman. We're all about providing services to our independent adults. And just to note, California changed our definition for older adults, and this is specifically for APS. Not every other program has changed their age definition, but here in California, as of last year, we are now defined as 60 and up for older adults, and dependent adults are between ages of 18 to 59. Keep in mind, every state is different, but we're focusing here within our county and state. Really quickly, I get a lot of, what's a dependent adult? Well, unfortunately, life isn't black and white, and there's a lot of gray that we work in this community. But typically, it could be somebody over 18 who has physical and mental limitations who do require somebody to take assist for their day-to-day needs. That might be not always somebody who, for instance, might have been receiving GGRC or regional center. Like I said, life isn't black and white. Or it could be somebody who's like 55 and had a massive stroke and now has a lot of physical and mental limitations. So when in doubt and you're not sure, definitely contact our hotline, and our social workers are here to help support you. So just to let you know a little bit more, we're 100% voluntary. This is one outreach that I really do because there's a lot of myths, but here at APS, we are 100% voluntary. There is no penalty if a person does not want to work with our social workers. Keep in mind, we have a great relationship with our local police department. So anytime we have concern regarding criminal matters, we will always cross-report that. Now, like I mentioned, Adults are much different because also dealing with a lot of shelters, long-term in communities. When you're working with children, it's not voluntary. I did 20 years of child welfare here in the county. And so it's really shifting our thoughts when it comes to working with families versus working with adults. Here, like I said, when it comes to children, we make as adults choices and decisions for them, but adults, they're really going to make their own decision. I like to tell people we could agree to disagree until we're purple in the face. But at the end of the day, we as an agency respect self-determination. Basically, it's a fancy word for it's your choice. They're your choices because you're an adult. Anytime there's concerns regarding capacity, a social worker can petition for conservatorship, but definitely it's the last road. We're really here as an agency to support independence as long as possible and aging in place. Just want to talk about myths because I knew I grew up with them. Common myths about APS. You could call them and they're going to tell you that you have to live at Shady Pines, or we actually don't have any of that, right? Because we're adults, we legally cannot remove people from their home. Big misconception. Majority of my job is doing outreach and education. And I actually do a lot of one-on-ones with our older adults in senior centers, or for instance, Mid-Penn, that is affordable living, right? So we're really debunking that. No, we do not remove people from their home. We cannot legally enter a home without permission. We can encourage you to accept services, but at the end of the day, that's their choice. I look at all of us here at this attending this presentation as a link, right? We can create links and build this individual a bracelet. It's up to the individual to wear the bracelet at the end of the day. We do not make medical diagnosis. Does not mean that we won't make referrals. Anytime we're not necessarily emergency response. And I say that because it's a case-by-case basis. But just like you, if you're experiencing somebody with a mental health crisis, we call 911 as well. Keep in mind, we legally cannot enter a home without permission. We do not share confidential information. The minute a call or referral comes in, it's confidential. Even if you want to call and follow up to see what the outcome is, we cannot share that with you. I like to say there's loopholes though. Sometimes we work with clients who are oversharers and they're going to tell you everything about themselves anyways. That is on their own choice if they want to share with you legally. Sure, that's their choice if they want to share. But for us, we cannot share confidential information. We do not get involved with immigration. And lastly, we don't get involved in family disputes. I like to say one social worker cannot fix 40 years of two aunts or fighting and nobody knows why, but these are really common myths. We're really here to investigate the individual, that the name on the referral. Yes, keep in mind, we'll talk to the collateral, such as family members, but we're really here to focus on the person being investigated. I won't go too much into this because it has been talked about with Daly City Partnership, but these are different types of elder abuse. I will just keep in mind, there's just a few that are different than working with children. And a big part of that is neglect, but we could self-neglect ourselves as well. Abandon, and one of our biggest is financial. Here in the county, I do a lot of trainings regarding financial abuse. If you'd like to learn more, I definitely could come back. It's really good training. But realistically, when we're talking about our older populations, I like to say that 60 to 100 is vastly different. That's 40 years sometimes of experience, and just understanding our generations. For instance, I grew up with the classic World War II grandparents, extremely trusting generation. You can have a handshake and your word was literally a contract to the generation. But then we look at boomers and typically they trust no one. So these could be vulnerability factors. Depression definitely is a challenging one. But trusting depression, just know that any type of abuse, typically there's usually more than one abuse occurring. And one of the biggest challenges for us is about 90% of these folks that are being victimized is somebody familiar, which for us is even harder because victims become a lot more hesitant to prosecute any type of abusers if it's their child, if it's their grandchild. I mean, sometimes there's so many years of codependency and so forth. So keeping in mind, we are not the police will handle the matter in any way they feel fit. At the end of the day, if somebody is letting their son who is really living with mental health challenges and they're really having challenges, we legally cannot tell that mom, you have to get your son out of here because she's an adult. That is going to be her choice. Like I mentioned, anytime there's criminal, the police will handle that matter. But just quickly, what are some signs to look out for? Isolation, hands down, this is one of the hardest community to tap into is people who are isolated. Sometimes people choose to be isolated and they're living their best. There's also people who are isolated and would like more support. But, when it comes to why don't you just call your family? Like I said, I came from child welfare. Not every family is healthy. Also keeping in mind our aging LGBTQ community. Some have been disowned from their family for decades and are extremely hesitant to work with agencies. So isolation could be a factor. I always like to say the one tool you cannot buy on Amazon is your intuition. Your intuition surely guides you in the right direction. But if you're feeling like something's off and this person is being fearful or something's uncomfortable around caregivers, decision makers, maybe avoiding health questions, missed doctor's appointment, all of a sudden you see a woman a month later and she's lost 25 pounds. Keep in mind, domestic violence doesn't necessarily stop. It might look different. For instance, if a person has been in a relationship for 40 plus years, just because they're older does not mean the physical violence stopped. It might look different. It's easier to mask this, decades of isolation, decade of conditioning, financial abuse. And now we could just say, oh, she's clumsy, she fell, or oh, she's on Coumadin, that blood thinner that causes bruising. Keep in mind, these, Coumadin does cause bruising, but typically you're not going to see bruising in a neck. Like my grandparents did not hit their elbow on a counter, right? I mean, their neck on a counter. It's usually like consistent places, but red flags can be places like the upper arms, necks, in between thighs, bottom of feet, or like I mentioned, a lot of accidents can be occurring. One of our biggest ones here for categories is financial abuse. Hands down, it is so bad. We literally hired a third social worker to really address this need. And it doesn't have to mean that it's coming from people who have wealth. It can be somebody on a fixed income. It could be your proposition for a job, right? And you're really needing money. And this person's like, here's a job offer. And we're going to give you this money if you do X, Y, Z. So a huge part of my job is to bring awareness. And I specifically have custom trainings going into our communities that do break down line by line. This is a scam. This is a junk email. Well, like I mentioned here, financially, what does that mean? Taking money or property. I mean, it's different if somebody as a caregiver says, here, can you go to Safeway and buy XYZ of food? And then all of a sudden, unauthorized, you go to Best Buy and buy a flat screen TV. That's when it changes, right? Forging signatures, Also, having people sign over the deed of trust. This does happen here. Wills, power of attorney, good to do every 10 years. We're always encouraging people to have their paperwork in order, but it's different if someone is trying to do it so that they can gain something. And lastly, the most challenging one is, scams. Scams are getting extremely prevalent, using scare tactics and so forth. And so just so that you're aware, and like I mentioned, if you guys would like to learn more, I'm definitely welcome and happy to come back. But these are pretty much a lot of our scams targeting our older adults. And even in the trainings that I provide, I break it down to generational. For instance, the older generation is getting hit a lot more with the grandparent love scam versus tech support scam. And why is that? Well, the older we are, the more likely we are to answer the phone, right? A lot of our boomers are coming out of retirement and have a different relationship with the computer. A lot of us call our IT department and they fix it. Guess what? We don't even know what IT looks like because they're typically remote in logging into our computers. So like I mentioned, these are some of the scams. We're seeing a lot of love scams. And they're also adapting into crypto love scams. We are seeing AI as well. Family caregiver and lottery sweepstakes. So here in San Mateo County, how do we combat this? Well, we actually created a task force in 2016, and this is all funded through Measure K fundings. We have now 3 social workers who are also deputy public guardians. We have 2 district attorney detectives. We have our county attorney who actually created this task force, and then me, who does all of the outreach, doing tabling, doing trainings, and always trying to find how we can have this conversation, because we are actually an underreported agency. When it comes to calls, for every 1 referral, we miss about 24, and that's national. But our task force here is only in San Mateo County. Some counties might have a task force similar. It might be named different, but majority of California does not have programs like this. Why do we have this? Well, sometimes we see victims go to their local police department and the PD will mention that it's a civil case. Oh, on our end, we're trying to say, no, it's a criminal case. So then we will contact our DA detectives, and our DA detectives will review the case and make that determination. If they feel that it is criminal, then as a team, we work like kind of like an MDT status. Our social worker supports our victims, our PD and our DA all talk together to make sure that if this is a criminal case, how could we support the PD, build the case? APS workers do not build cases. It's the police department because we don't deal with criminal. And if there's any concerns regarding penal code, we'll call our attorney and work all of this matter out. It's really about supporting our community, specifically when they have been victims. I will start going into mandated reporters. Majority of you guys are mandated reporters. I always like to say, if you're not sure, ask your supervisor. But here for our county, to keep it light, we actually are online. So you're welcome. A lot of people love this. You will fill out the SOC 341. And I like to just show the 342 because a lot of folks are not aware that banks are mandated reporters for older adults. They are mandated to just, if they have any concerns regarding financial exploitation. And they're actually one of our biggest for reporting stuff that we just wouldn't have any access to banks. But everyone else, we are the SOC 341. Here's the link. It's all via DocuSign. So you just go online, fill it out. If you ever just want to talk to one of our social workers, call our hotline. We're definitely here to support us. You are legally obligated to complete a SOC 341 within 2 business days. So it's 2 business days. Keep in mind, you are not finished completing your report until you submit this form. It's great that you call our hotline, but for us, we need this form. If not, it becomes this back and forth of social worker calling you to fill out the form, and we cannot close our case on our end, and your due diligence of reporting is not finished until this form is completed and submitted. Just want to let you know at our hotline, we're awesome, but we are more than just an APS hotline here in our county. We're also like a resource hub. I sit next to the hotline, and during COVID, I can't tell you how many times we had phone calls that I'm homebound, I want a vaccination, it's flooding, the rains, what can I do? We're just here to support our older community. We are an APS referral hotline, but we are also the first place you will call for in-home support service, IHSS. If you want to make a referral, that is what you would do, is call our hotline as well. So now I'm just going to transition into other programs here at Aging and Adult Services. So conservatorship, we do have conservatorship. Generally, it's for older individuals who might be disabled, unable to take care of their own needs. And so somebody will be appointed for their day-to-day needs, such as health, food, clothing, shelter, and so forth. Limited conservatorship is a very unique conservatorship for adults with developmental disabilities. And so this can be a conservatorship that is really customized to the individual, because it's all about having them live as independent as they can. So conservatee can have somebody manage their finances, but it's typically not as strict as a general because they're two different populations. We also have conservatorship of the person and or the estate. So one person can have both, one person can have either, one or the other. So like I said, if life is not black and white, but typically conservator of the person is somebody making decisions for their day-to-day needs, versus conservator of the estate handles the conservator's financial matters like paying bills, collecting person income, kind of liquidating, making sure all of their assets are accounted for. When it comes to individuals with mental health, it's we call it LPS, but it's Latterman Peterson short. Is that what it was? Short? Yes. So typically our behavioral health BHRS usually oversees these cases, not always. LPS is pretty much started by local government, and it can be a public guardian, conservator, but typically individuals living with mental health, these conservatorships typically last a year. If an extension is needed, that the court will need to sign off. LPS is much different because there's shorter timelines than but different population. This is individuals living with mental health versus, Miss Mary had a great, healthy, independent life. And then around 70, she started having Alzheimer's and an advanced Alzheimer's. Much different population. And the other conservatorships are typically for life, where these ones on average last about a year, if not longer. So just want to say this is another program that a lot of folks don't realize, but the public administrator. If you've ever wondered what happens when someone passes away and there's nobody to claim the individual, actually, this department steps in. This department is also open to the public, so anyone can access it as well, but they typically will make appropriate burial arrangements. They will look for any property, try to really liquidate, make sure before there's any theft or loss. They're going to liquidate all of the assets, but they're going to do their best to locate any heirs to the estate if there is an estate. Like I mentioned, this program is also open to anybody. Supportive services. All right. Really quickly, Home Safe. Home Safe is a program here under APS. the eligibility is that folks need to be APS clients in an APS or also in the process of intake. It's a program for individuals experiencing homelessness that are also at imminent risk of homelessness. Oops. Also, some of the criteria, HomeSafe is really designed to help connect folks for housing. It's not going to be a long-term solution. For instance, we can come in and do some support to really try to have somebody stabilize housing, but we don't have the funds, and the program is not designed to pay for housing for the remainder of that individual's life. So for instance, there's intensive case management, housing navigation, stabilization, and so forth. And just to break down a little bit, but these are different ways that we can utilize the funding. One positive of this program is that it's not extremely stringent. It gives counties flexibility to really be able to support people because life is not always one issue. It might be a renter needs to declutter the home in order for the landlord to stay. It can be also somebody who owns a home. And for instance, maybe they're behind a few for property taxes or mortgage payments. Keep in mind, we'll be here to support, but we can't pay that person's mortgage for the remainder of life. It can be home repairs. Some of our folks are having, especially with the storms, a lot of roof issues and so forth. APS is a voluntary program. And so this person has to be working with APS and also wanting to be a part of any type of these programs. I do have a link, and I will show that at the end if there's a lot more detailed questions you may have. The Department on Justice and Aging really put a great training together. It's about 45 minutes specifically on this program, and really truly breaks down different ways it can be utilized. But for the sake of time and for today, this is really just an overview of some of the programs that we have here. Linkages, we're in the process of hiring one person. We had our social worker leave. Like I mentioned, we are underreported as an agency. So we are not long-term case carrying, different than child welfare, where there's social workers who will hold that case for years. Here, an average APS social worker is going to go out, do their investigation, and then close it, because at the end of the day, these are independent adults. For everybody else who needs a little more assistance, we have a social worker who can help assist them, and they can assist them up to about 6 months. And we're in the process of helping them if they need a little more support. One of the most popular programs, in-home support services and public authority. IHSS is a program that really is about having our community age in place as long as possible. You have to be over 65 on Medi-Cal, and having the needs of a person to come in and assist you for your day-to-day needs. Different things that they could do is house cleaning, meal prep, laundry, grocery, personal care. Public authority is actually a state program, even though we all sit in the same office, but public authority is here to help folks who don't have a provider. Keep in mind, statewide and nationally, we are in need of providers. The demand is so high, but we don't have the providers to match the need. Typically, a lot of our IHSF recipients are already have somebody in mind to help them with their day-to-day needs and a caregiver. But for folks who don't, they would go through the public authority. And then lastly, enhanced case management, also known as ECM. It's just another level higher than IHSS. Once again, it's a Medi-Cal program, but it's for everybody in the IHSS program who needs a higher level of support. Typically, an IHSS social worker only will see the client once to twice a year, where these social workers will work more intensively with them. Keep in mind, this might be folks who fall frequently, who are having a high rate of going to the ER. The social workers will really work with them to support these challenges that they're going through and really provide more of a higher case management to them. So lastly, like I mentioned, the Home Safe program. If you are interested in learning more, I took the training yesterday just as a refresher myself, because I would never personally recommend a training I wouldn't want to sit through. But I will say it's not bad. I promise you, I would never give you something that's a snooze fest. It was really, really good. It was a state program. It was a state webinar, and there were so many allies and having fantastic questions. I will be truthful that this is the first time I've even presented for Home Safe. I've typically had my manager. She's really been focusing on this program, but she just left the county last Friday, so I can't call her and to give a little more information. But like I mentioned, this is a good training, I promise. Everything else, my name is Cassie Villar. Here is my contact information. I just want to mention thank you for all of the hard work that you guys do supporting our community. I know it's not easy. This is a challenging community, and just please take care of yourself, because it's so hard not to come home with it and want to save the world. But burnout's real, and take care of yourself and know that you're not alone, and all of us here are here to support each other in our programs any way we can. And that's it. So thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. We, of course, have time for some questions. You're getting a number of thanks in the chat box as well. One question that came through, Shenny was looking to find out if an APS client needs to be 65 or older.
APS is now 60 and up.
60 and up.
Yes, which, to make it less confusing, IHSS, which of our most popular programs, I believe is still 65, but APS has changed its definition to 60. I will say California is really advanced in the out of the niche, the rest of the states, for really trying to have these conversations at a state level to support our community. We have an aging coalition, I think. I forgot the exact name, but we have a lot of allies right now working at state level to address caregivers, to address all these different challenges that we're having. I hope more folks can continue the movement, because these needs are going to be ridiculously more challenging as we go further.
Cassie, I also want to thank you for setting the bar even higher. I strive now to only deliver trainings that I would be willing to sit through. Thanks for that.
It's true. I promise. I listened yesterday. A lot of great information, a lot of specific questions, because our nationwide, our counties, our in our cities, we're just having so many more older adults experiencing homelessness. We get calls at the hotline. He's 85 and he's on a fixed income, and now the landlord wants to sell, and we're not equipped, all of us, to provide long-term. We also do not have seniors shelters, like an emergency shelter. I know in the other side, working with youth, ironically, if you put like an 8-year-old living with an 85-year-old, they're going to get a lot more services than the 85-year-olds with no minor. That's the truth. There's emergency placements more for families than there are for older adults. Then you throw in an added layer of we're voluntary. And some of these folks, as we get older, have generational trauma when it comes to government and not wanting to work and distrusting. Our agency doesn't get involved with immigration. We don't have anything to do with that, but it doesn't mean that we can't take on a case with an undocumented individual and experience the same barriers of view when it comes to low income housing because they don't qualify. So just food for thought. A lot of folks you'll hear is APS does nothing. We're limited. We sound intimidating. I think we should rebrand ourselves and name ourselves different, because a lot of folks do get confused. Well, the child welfare does this. Why don't you do this? Because we're adults. And capacity is my number one question when I'm out in the field. And the truth of the matter is we legally cannot tell somebody how to live or where to live unless a conservatorship is signed. But how much of the gray is a challenge? It's so big.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really not an apples to apples comparison. People hear protective services and they automatically jump to conclusions based on what they understand about child welfare systems. And yeah, I really appreciate you hammering home that distinction. It also takes me back to Janet and Mariah's point earlier about collaboration and connections between different agencies that are providing different services. We really have to foster this collaborative atmosphere and constantly remind ourselves of opportunities to bring in other resources. I know y'all have had to listen to me talk so much, but a couple of things I just wanted to pick up on, a couple threads I wanted to pull on as I was listening to Cassie speak. One important nexus I'd like to flag. Cassie spoke to us today about signs of neglect or abuse, and then combined with the common ambivalence that we see from older clientele to prosecute their close relative who may in fact be their abuser. And I want to just highlight that, again, it's that breakdown of social networks that is often precipitating older adults actually seeking shelter. And so let's just try to keep that issue in mind, try to keep our eyes and ears up for these kinds of signs that Cassie stated, especially signs of physical abuse when we're first interacting with new clients in a shelter environment. And then I also want to flag that I think there's a nexus here to problems. In fact, Cassie, would you mind pulling up slide 24?
Wow,
again?
you had a number?
I'm that good.
Did I?
I got numbers.
Wow. Sure. I am pulling it up right now. Actually, let me just go into share mode. I was just reading it.
Cool.
Here we go.
Awesome. I love this list because this reminds me of some of the problem solving conversations that we've been having. So Homebase has been working with your problem solving cohort in San Mateo County a bit to talk about how best to interact, especially for shelter providers to interact with housing problem solving. And I think one thing I'm kind of seeing on this list is a few opportunities to explore when that housing problem solving conversation is happening. So when we contact housing problem solving to assist folks who are recently arriving to shelter, some of these may present opportunities for collaboration or even solution. Most obviously, we look down at the very end, we're seeing motel and care placement options, but also some of these other things, in the best of circumstances, I understand these situations may be relatively rare speaking, but some of these things are not uncommon reasons for housing displacement. So we're talking about security deposits, home repairs or modifications that need to be made to the residence in order for the person to maintain their stable housing, delinquent bills or taxes, things of that nature. My understanding is that problem solving can help find solutions for issues like that. So keep in mind when you get in touch with your problem solving agent that they may be able to assist with some of these options. Let's always try to assess options, and especially some of these probably require quick action because somebody may be right at the precipice of being able to actually or maybe running short of time to actually resolve issues like that. So again, Cassie, thank you so much for pulling that slide back up, and I just
No
wanted
problem.
to connection. Okay, I'm seriously going to stop talking now. I want to make sure we have space for other folks' questions. In fact, I would open it up generally in case folks had questions for Cassie or Janet. I'd be willing to answer a question too if it was directed at me, but I'm going to try to defer to the experts. I am embracing the power of the silence.
That just means we hopefully did a good job.
So yeah, I always try to remind myself that means that we've given all the answers. Everyone has all the answers. They're going to leverage that into all of the power. We're going to solve all of the problems now.
And if you have questions and you think about it on your tomorrow, just email us or call us, me and Janet. We're here to support you guys. Definitely.
1000%. Let me take us to the last slide here. So we've heard a lot of information today, a lot to process, of course, opportunities for collaboration. You're now aware of different agencies that can help you resolve a myriad of issues that face our older neighbors who might be experiencing homelessness. You're always welcome, of course, to reach out to us at San Mateo at homebaseccc.org. Again, we are your friendly neighborhood technical assist. Sorry, I just saw the new Spider-Man movie. But we're always here for your technical assistance questions. We do on-call TA as well. And so you're welcome to hit us up anytime you have compliance issues, things of that nature. And if you just want to get in touch about today's materials, or to reach out to our guest presenters. I want to, of course, extend a major round of applause, and I'm going to use it, there it is, a major round of applause to our guest speakers, Janet and Cassie. I want to seriously thank you so much for your collaboration over these past many weeks in planning toward this training. Of course, we have a satisfaction survey, which I need to drop in the chat. My mouse isn't cooperating. This will also be available by email. What is going on? What is wrong with this thing? Okay, there we go. And I'm going to drop that there. That is the satisfaction survey for today's training. As always, we really appreciate your feedback. Constructive criticism is more than welcome. We're always looking to improve these trainings that we deliver for you all. That link will also appear in the follow-up email, which you'll see in the coming days. And last call, any questions for, Cassie and Janet, are you okay for folks to have your email addresses?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will be sure to include those in the email, in the follow-up email that goes out as well. And Mariah, thank you so much. Yes. And you can get in touch with these agencies as you encounter issues as they arise. And of course, presentation materials from today will be available in a public folder, which will be linked in that follow-up email as well. Okay. I think that's it. Last call, any questions, any concerns, thoughts? Thanks are welcome. Thank you, Catalina. Yes. Always appreciate the appreciation. Yes. Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lodi. Annie, Jessica, thank you. All right, everybody, let's gift ourselves back just a quarter of an hour. And please enjoy the rest of your day. Maybe use it to go get some of that sunshine while it's still out there. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.